sütemény, mogyoró van az ő tetején. Ilyet én nem kapok, ha ezért zokogok, tudom, sajnálnak az angyalok. Nekem nincs anyukám, apukám, csak egy fél kifli az uzsonnám. Közben jó, édeském, illata száll felém, jaj de jó, a habas sütemény.
Hello and welcome to Conversations with Nurit. I am Nurit. I'm speaking with you today from Budapest, Hungary. And my guest today is probably the funniest man I have got to meet. His name is JP Sears. He's speaking with us from Charleston, South Carolina. And JP, welcome. It's so good to finally meet you.
Thank you, Nurit. Thank you for being weird enough to have me on your wonderful show.
Weird is my second name. And JP is an emotional healing coach. He's an international teacher, a world traveler, and a curious life student of life. So JP has, I think by now you must have over 180 videos on YouTube.
That sounds about right. You're probably more in tune with that than I am, but that sounds about right.
Yeah, I've been laughing my head off preparing for this. I'm going to tell you, your sense of humor is unbelievable. I love it. And I think part of the reason that it's so wonderful is because it really, I think everyone can resonate with it. Anyone who's been on any path, life path, spiritual path, whatever, can relate to your humor. It's so human and so natural. And it's really wonderful. And JP has, I believe I found 3 different kinds of series that you have. You have the ultra spiritual ones that are very funny. I laugh just thinking about them. And some of the titles are, dating spiritual people, why to legalize marijuana, if meat eaters behave like vegans, the genius uses of coconut oil, how to meditate, the Tony Robbins experience. That was hilarious. It's one of my favorites. The psychology of the selfie, flat earth theory, how to be a life coach. That I love that. I used to be a life coach, and I watched so many of those life coaches. That was hilarious, especially the part of, I think you said there, somebody's had a great achievement and now they move from the basement to their mother's guest room.
Absolutely, yeah.
That cracked me up. How to be ultra spiritual, and my all-time favorite is the newer age movement.
Well, thank you for being able to laugh with me, Nurit, and sharing those titles. It really is a joy to me to see the levity inside of you that you get from your experience of those videos. Yeah, and you mentioned the humor and how it makes me human. I really appreciate your personal views and compliments towards me about that. And I do think that humor in general, if you look at the words, at least in English, humor and human, they're very related words. And I would dare say part of what connects us to important dimensions of our humanity is humor. They're doors that I don't know that we can open in different ways. And I also think that humor is a universal language.
Yes.
No matter what culture someone's in, what language, no matter how foreign sounding the language is, we may have no idea what they're saying when they're just talking about things, but laughter.
Yes.
That's something we all understand. There are no cultural barriers that separate the connection that happens with laughter. We know someone when they're laughing. We know we have our version of that experience, and there's no language barriers with laughter. We understand someone.
Yeah. It's amazing. It actually makes the mind stop when you laugh.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
when the mind stops, we're all connected. It's only the mind that separates us, but let's not get too serious yet. Yeah, so I love the way you poke fun at the spiritual facade, and that's why I like the newer age movement so much, because as one who has been on a 40-year search in the new age, not the newer age, now I'm I'm ready to levitate.
Step up your game, yes.
I'm stepping up. I think from now on, if I ever want to improve in my spirituality, I'll just be watching your videos every day.
I like that. And
great medicine.
And you mentioned your journey in the kind of the new age, but your journey has been 40 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's incredible. And yeah, I won't pretend my journey has been that long, but for as long as my journey has been, I started to discover that, you know, I have a lot of dogma in my journey. You know, the path that I've been taking to find myself, I'm now finding little deviations in that path where I'm losing myself. Even though I'm still convinced I'm finding myself, but having those realizations that in my dogma and, you know, my rigidity, that's part of the self-therapy that I use my videos for. There's definitely a selfish motive of like, I want to shine the light on my shadow, shine the light on my dogma so that I don't have to take it as seriously. And of course, inviting others to do the same if they choose to is a part of it.
Yeah. Well, it's so important to be able to laugh at yourself, like you say in your website. It's really important, because if I couldn't laugh at myself, I could never admit that the 40 years were not the real thing, because I've been misled for many years and I've done all the wrong things. So it's very therapeutic, really.
Yeah.
Laugh at yourself.
Yeah, there's a guy named Oscar Wilde. He said something to the effect of, life is too important to take seriously. And I think being able to laugh at ourselves, not for the sake of belittling ourselves or shaming ourselves or escaping ourselves, because humor can be used as an escape, a disconnection, and it can be used as a way of connection and deeper understanding. So I think life is too important to not know how to laugh with ourselves as well. I think sometimes, at least somewhere along the way, I got programmed, or I probably programmed myself with a really goofy belief that said something along the lines of, if I'm laughing at something, then it's a sign of not taking it as important or not respecting it. And I'm like, wow. Now I'm just curious about the opposite. An inability to laugh at something, is that, and just taking it seriously, is that a sign of disrespect itself? And I think there's a word that I'm trending on replacing in my vocabulary, replacing the word serious with sincere. I think they're a little bit different. I think sincere implies more softness. And of course, there's times where, to me, it's not appropriate to laugh. If I go to a funeral or it's in the middle of a wedding ceremony, it's like, to me, making jokes there, that would be a way of breaking intimacy, breaking the connection to vulnerability. But I can be there and be very sincere, but not necessarily the concrete gravity of seriousness. And I guess what I'm listening to my words, and now I'm thinking, wow, do I take humor very seriously? It's like, oh, dang it, there's the seriousness. It got me again. I thought I was getting away from it, but it got me again.
Yeah. Well, the neat thing too is that even within your humor and your jokes, there's a lot of truth in it. It's like, sometimes a lot of comedians, I don't see you as a comedian, I see you more as actually as a coach and a spiritual guide. A lot of comedians, they have to rely on dirty jokes and stuff like that, but your humor hits the nail on the head with a lot of very good, very important topics and very important ideas. You know, for example, in the newer age movement, You talk about in the newer age, you don't teach people how to think positively, you teach people how to think. That's actually very important. Very, very, not too many people are aware of that, of how just to speak, to learn to think positively is a trap in itself.
Yeah, it is. And I am fascinated with the language of humor. So you mentioned, speaking a real message with humor, not just trying to shock people into laughter with dirty language as some people might do. But one of the things that fascinates me about the language of humor is the messages that are embedded in whatever's being said. My opinion is they tend to go in deeper for people, because when something's said in a humorous way, our at least my normal human defenses don't really go up. It's like, it is humorous, there's nothing to defend against. So a message can go in deeper without me getting defended. But if you sat there in a very serious tone and said, JP, here's the truth and here's what I want you to consider, it's like, all right, I'm resisting you before you even start. That's human nature. And I think that's something we can work on to become less defended. But nonetheless, there's magic with humor, where it's a language of playfulness. Safety, when we're defended, I think we're in a posture of trying to be safe, self-preserve. But playfulness implies things are safe, hence I can play. And I think not only does humor allow things to go in deeper, but also I look at humor as an alchemist. I think not only once things go in deeper, but I believe it's like an alchemist and can start to transform our beliefs. So you mentioned something I might say in a video, and hopefully if there's a belief that we can identify with in that video, and we see that belief, like, oh, here's like a belief in a way I've been using a belief that JP's portraying, hopefully that can begin a transformation process. And so, and I look at my dog. I think there's a reason why dog is God spelled forward. My dog teaches me a lot. And what, like, flattering analogy, but when my dog needs medicine, if I just give him the pill, if I give him what he needs, he'll spit it out. He won't eat it. But if I wrap his medicine in like cheese, okay, now he wants to eat it. So to me, the art of humor can be used the same way. We wrap up a message in a very appealing language of humor, a very appealing story, entertainment of humor. And hopefully we can see beyond and feel beyond just the entertainment to the medicine that it potentially carries, or the poison for that matter. But fingers crossed I have good intentions.
That's wonderful. That's great. Now you also have some more serious videos. Even there you crack some jokes here and there, which are great. But you have some very important topics, and I got to tell you, the one on law of attraction, I find that is one of the best talks on law of attraction that I've heard so far. It is superb. And what is exceptionally good about it, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I'm not trying to convince anybody, is that you expose the fact that most law of attraction practices are ego-based. And I used to practice it for many years myself, and I didn't realize it. I do now, because I don't do that anymore. I don't indulge in it that way. But I don't think too many people realize how ego-based it is. And I loved one of your statements that you said, what can be more dangerous than to put your life in the control of your ego? That is very, very powerful. And it's true.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, thank you, sister, for seeing it that way and valuing that message that I happen to value too. And, just like you, I've spent years, kind of thinking is what I would call like a one-dimensional law of attraction enthusiast, which to me, the summary of that one-dimensional law of attraction enthusiast is whatever I want, I can get. And I can control the universe around me into giving me that. And not only that, but what I want is helpful to me. So for me, that can be inherently dangerous. Maybe, and I think that plays on what's called the magical mind of the child, where when we're babies and children, we learn to believe that we control the universe around us. So when the baby cries, mom or dad comes up, picks him up, and the baby has the sensation, I did that. I made those big people pick me up because I cried, or I cry a different way. And I learned that I can make them feed me, and I do something kind of cute. I learned they laughed. I made them laugh. So the magical mind of the child becomes very, very, very addicted to the illusion of power that comes from a sense of controlling around the world around them. And in reality, from my perspective, the child's not controlling the world around them. Mom and dad have their own free will. Everybody else has their own free will. But the child has the sensation, I'm in control. So I think control feels like power to the human ego. And I think surrender feels like the loss of power to the human ego. And I think for my spirit self, at least, it's just the opposite. Yeah. Control, gratifying my ego, feels like a loss of power, strangulation, suffocation to my spirit and heart. And surrender feels like true power to my spirit and scary to my ego. And I, in a sense, the way I look at law of attraction from a different point of view is not through the lens of what can I manifest here? What do I want to experience and how can I manifest and make that happen? To me, I look at it more through realization, self-realization, where I look at what do I want to experience? Let's just say I want to be rich. And of course, my mind will have a very literal connotation on that. How dare you look at that symbolically or metaphorically? But if my mind says, I want to experience what it is to be rich, if my heart can then look at that literal desire symbolically, realize I'm after so much more, and then I realize, just like they tell us, and we comprehend intellectually, but deny experientially, we live in infinity. Infinite possibilities are all around us. So to me, if I want to experience what it is to be rich, self-realization says, how can I become aware of the richness that is all around me? My ego symbolizes that with a pile of money. And to me, that literal is not necessarily the highest vibration of consciousness, but if I can realize, okay, my ego is projecting something onto money symbolically, what's that? Where's the richness? I'm looking out my window right now, and these trees are full of leaves. They're green. It's like, wow, there is so much. And my grass is green. There's a rose bush I'm looking at. There is so much richness of life in front of me that I'm like this to. But if I intend to self-realize the richness around me, it doesn't mean that I need to control life to do anything differently. Life knows what it's doing. But can I actually get myself to surrender into the realization that what I desire is actually already there? In infinity is a lot to comprehend. So of course we can forgive ourselves for not seeing everything all at once because it's too much to process. So yeah, law of attraction. I think our spirit says, give our lower self what we need, and our ego says, nope, give me what I want. and I think our egos can use the law of attraction to justify a lot of our desire to gratify ourselves with control and the illusion of power. But hopefully we don't control the universe around us, because I think it's a little bit more powerful than we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you say, you can put a spoon of dye in the ocean. It doesn't mean it's going to change its color. I love that image. Yeah. And I like, you challenge people in that video too. You say, ask them to ask themselves, why do I want this? And what part of me wants this?
Yeah.
Very provocative questions.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you seeing that way. And I agree. And I think we can provoke ourselves in a great way, challenging our belief about anything. When we stop getting so hung up on the what we want, what I'm trying to accomplish, and start to understand more our heart of the matter by asking why. If I'm looking to set up a new business, great. I don't think that's inherently a good thing or a bad thing. It's a thing, but what matters most is why. What's driving me? Am I driven to set up a new business because I see it as a creative endeavor and I want to experience the unfolding of a mystery through this canvas of a new business? And do I want to contribute to society? Am I doing it to help my family earn money? Or is my why behind the new business, I want to have a new business so it can be built up, have a huge recognition from the community around me, so that I can have a sense of significance to compensate how part of me still carries a deep sense of insignificance inside. The two whys are very different. One why might be leading us to self, where the business is working for us. The other why might be the business is engineered to help me escape a part of me I'm uncomfortable with. Therefore, I think the business might be gratifying temporarily, but ultimately works against ourselves. So I think we deserve to understand our own why, not just buy into the story of what we want. Of course, pay attention to it. Life is awesome. There's so much that we can experience. So I think our wants and desires, while I wouldn't wish any of us to be a slave to our wants and desires, I think they deserve to be respected, acknowledged, and then acted upon, especially after we respect our heart and ask why. There's so much understanding about our self, our mind, our ego, our heart that can come if we can curiously explore our why. And I do believe typically our first answer around like, oh, why do I want this? It'll be a very self-serving answer to justify us going after what we think we want. But, if we give ourselves the ability to ask why a few times and listen to the answers that are a little bit of a struggle to get, I think that means we're connecting with some of the unconscious agenda that we've attached to what it is we want.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And I understand you coach people, so you obviously help them through those questions as well.
Yeah, well, hopefully I help them. It's maybe best case scenario, I help them to help themselves.
Yeah.
And, the question why is a very simple question. Placed in the right spaces, I think it serves us really well, even when we get into healing. When we look at, I think we all are guilty is a fun word, but guilty to one degree or another of things like self-sabotage. We do things to work against ourselves. It might be we're continually re-experience some kind of pain, some kind of failure, some kind of self-defeating deal. And we can try to change those kind of things until we're blue in the face. Yet, part of, in my opinion, what's very important to break the pattern is understanding our why. A part of us has a damn good reason for doing exactly what we're doing. Even if another part of us says, oh, I want to get in great shape, I want to get really healthy, but then our actions really work against us. We overeat, eat the wrong things, don't exercise, watch too much TV. So another part of us, maybe more unconsciously, has a great reason for keeping us out of shape, unhealthy. And until we understand that why, in my experience, we're kind of still caught in the tractor beam of its unconscious agenda. Yet I think the understanding the why is part of what brings the light of awareness onto that essentially shadow area of ourselves. I think our shadow self is simply that we don't know about ourselves. But if we can become the curious 2-year-old, not interrogating 2-year-old, but the curious 2-year-old that looks at what we do and we says, why? Why? Both the beautiful things and the things that we judge to be crummy. Oh, my self-sabotage. I think our gifted experiences and the experiences that feel like a curse, there's a lot of inward connection when we can surf the wave of why.
Well said. Exactly. And that's why I like your questions, and actually it brings me to my second favorite favorites of your more coaching videos was how to be yourself when you don't know who you are. And you ask a brilliant question there. You said, what if you are someone who doesn't know who you are?
I like how I laugh. I mean, apparently I asked the question, but I love how I can laugh at that. And I also love how you appreciate that question.
Oh, I love it. It's so important. We don't ask ourselves these questions. We don't have that curiosity, and it's so great that you push people to ask those questions, because who said that we have to know everything?
Yeah, who said that? I think unfortunately some part of us wrote that script unconsciously. You have to know everything. And I think originally, at least for the part of me that did that, I would imagine it was done out of a sense of self-preservation and a need to feel safe and valued. Growing up, in school, I was never validated for not knowing an answer to the teacher's question. First off, I didn't know how to say, oh gosh, teacher, that's a great question. I don't know the answer, but I'm really curious about the possibilities. Nope. Wrong answer, JP. You need to know the answer. And I think that's sort of like a pattern. It happens in our homes. You need to know. And I think a sense of certainty, a sense of knowing gives us a sense of like, I comprehend the world around me, so I feel safe in it. Doesn't mean we do comprehend the world around us. It means we have our story about it, and then we believe our story about it, and then we call that knowing. And then I think we reach a point in the journey of all of our lives where knowing becomes less important. Building a sense of self-preservation becomes less important, and experiencing a sense of self-realization, not self-preservation, that becomes more important. And knowing thyself becomes more important than protecting thyself. It's no longer about becoming validated by other people. It's about feeling a validation within ourselves. All easier said than done. So when we get to that point, I think there's like a beautiful state we get in, and it's a state of pure humbleness that says, I don't know. I only know that I don't know. So it's a very unnerving experience for us to sit there and say, okay, I've been alive for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 70 years, however long. And everything I thought I knew about myself, everything I believed about myself, and all my stories about life, the world around me, and what's happened to me, those are all just an illusion. And it's okay. It doesn't make it a bad thing, doesn't make it wasted experiences. It's fact, it's part of the cherished experience. You mentioned earlier, Nurit, about your 40 years on the New Age path. I would dare, like, I don't know the details, but I would dare say, what a great investment those 40 years. You know, you and I in our, call it the New Age path, we probably, at least for me, I had a sense of certainty the whole time. I know, and this is who I am. And that serves a great purpose. I think we need to learn to build a sense of self so that we can eventually grow beyond that and realize I'm not that sense of self, but I couldn't get to this place of growing beyond it if I didn't grow that sense of self and believe it for as long as I need to believe it. So yeah, I find it kind of goofy that honestly, how much I still to this day think I'm supposed to know. I was asked a question recently about, JP, if you're whatever, your future self from 20 years in the future, if he came back and was giving you advice, what would you imagine he'd say to you? And the answer that just came to me is he would tell me, you're not supposed to have it all together. You're not supposed to know everything. And that was liberating to hear. It's okay that you don't know. It's okay that you don't have it all together, and you don't need to pretend to. It's like, oh, wow, that's like having the teacher come up to us and say, yeah, see this test in front of you? In order to get an A, you don't have to know the answers. But if somehow the teacher could hook up electrodes and experience our consciousness exploring possibilities, even though we may never come up with an answer or even the right answer, but it's like, okay, you get an A if you explore the possibilities well. Yeah. Not just be so narrow-minded that you have this sense of certainty that I know how to validate because you have the same answer that the answer key does, and then you get an A. So to me, that was kind of like the future self saying, yeah, exploring possibilities. That's what gives you a good grade in life. And I think the good grade in life, it's not someone putting a passing grade on a piece of paper. I think it's comes from having a good sense of quality of life. And I think how I measure quality of life typically is through a sense of meaning and purpose inside.
Yeah.
And to me, that comes from the fountain of youth of curiosity, not certainty, being able to not know and be okay with it, rather than I don't know, but I'm not okay with it. And I experience that to be a shaming thing. Oh, that's tough. I think, and I don't think anybody on earth can give us that permission other than us.
Yeah.
Where we can look at ourselves in the mirror and say, JP, you don't have to know. And when you don't know, it's okay. And here's the real punchline of the joke. When you think you know, it's just you thinking you know. And that's goofy too. And it's okay that you even do that.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's so true what you say about education, and I think there's a lot of carryover from our school years into our spiritual life. And when I remember when I was in high school, I was a very slow reader, and there is no way I could read these. I know you like you write about thick books. It makes you smart. The thicker the book, the better.
Absolutely.
I know, very. So we had these thick books, and I couldn't read them in time for the exam. So when the exam came, I just made shit up, the hero said this because he felt that, and all this kind of stuff. And that's how we continue in our life. We get into spirituality, and I'm supposed to know who I am. So okay, so I'll make shit up again. I'm a monk, or I'm a this, or I'm a that.
I like that. Make it up.
It's all made up anyways.
Yeah, it seems to be. And hell, maybe that's part of our co-creative practice. And maybe peace of mind just comes from being okay with it and being able to laugh at, like, yeah, no matter who I think I am, I'm making that up. Like, how can my finite mind comprehend the infiniteness of who I really am? I don't think it can. So, how could I possibly have like a really accurate sense of self? Yet I need a sense of self, and it's beautiful to make it up. And can we be aware we are making it up? I think it helps us take ourselves less seriously. I think, don't believe who you think you are is helpful. Still think who you are, because we got to have a sense of self. We can't bypass that, but just don't believe who it is that you think you are. And I think you mentioned the idea of how can you be yourself when you don't know who you are. I think being versus knowing, being ourself versus knowing who we are, very different. I wonder about the question, is it possible to ever not be ourself? I think it's incredibly possible for us to not know who we are. But to me, it's psychological torment to convince ourselves that I can't be myself if I don't know who I am. But I think, to me, there's graceful permission to step more into our true power when we realize I can very much be myself, even though intellectually I don't know who I am. And when I do know who I am, again, joke's on me, I'm not even that. I'm probably something way more freaking expansive than even that. But yeah, it's kind of our beingness versus our knowingness. Oh man, it's two different worlds.
And I think that's why the humor is so wonderful, because it helps us not take ourselves too seriously.
It's for me, it's medicine. It's not the only medicine, and like any kind of medicine, too much or too little can be lethal. But the right dose for us, I think, is what makes the substance of anything, humor in this case, medicinal.
And then there was my other favorite, actually, it's not a topic that I'm that close to, but I loved your it's the one of the Romeo and Juliet syndrome. I thought it was very insightful, the delusion of wanting what we can't have and believing an imagined story.
Yeah,
I found that very, very insightful. I don't think many people consider that when they're considering relationships. So it's wonderful. Your coaching and your videos cover so much territory, so many different life situations. So I really feel there's something in it for everyone. It's really wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you for that. And I'd kind of forgotten about that Romeo and Juliet video, and I appreciate you bringing that up. It's wonderful to think about, and the premise of that video, I mean, playing certainly off the theme of the old Romeo and Juliet story that we all know, and part of their plight was we want each other, but we just can't have each other because our families are fighting. And I think oftentimes when there is a wounded part of us that feels a sense of safety by staying disconnected from other people, because if I never connect, then I can never be disconnected from. Essentially, it's like I protect myself from rejection by always staying disconnected. But if we can see that mechanism inside of us clearly, that can be too vulnerable, even for us to see. It's like, oh, well, if I can see that I want to stay disconnected, then that means I also see and feel the original pain that's motivated me to stay in a disconnected posture. So we can cover that up with a very altruistic, essentially opposite experience of, I really want this person. I find someone married, I find whoever it is, someone who I can't have. And I just, man, I want them so much. But in reality, the reason why I want someone or something that I can't have is because I, at a deeper level, don't want them. I want to stay disconnected. And this is just very convenient, noble looking camouflage for my defense mechanism of staying disconnected, which is a compensation mechanism for how some part of me was deeply hurt once upon a time through some kind of disconnection experience. And I think that's interesting. And for me, another part of the Romeo and Juliet story that I think only every single person on earth can relate to when we look at relationships is when we're in the beginning stages of a relationship, you know, the infatuation stage where it's, oh, it feels amazing. And I think one of the reasons why it feels amazing is because we're becoming very connected with who we want that person to be. We think we're connecting to who they are. Boy, it feels so good, really getting to know you. But in reality, the relationship's new. I haven't become disillusioned yet in realizing that who you are isn't exactly who I want you to be. I'm still convinced that you are who I want you to be. But, you know, the infatuation stage ends when the gap becomes closed between who we want this person to be and we start to really learn who they actually are. And I think at the heart of it, that's always a greater gift than who we want them to be. But nonetheless, I think people, when we don't know about that phenomenon, we can get married to a person, stay with them or whatever it is, and we can be with them for years and have sometimes passive, sometimes active punishment and conflict towards them because we're still mad at them, punishing them and shaming ourselves for them not being who we want them to be. But if we can, you know, in the infatuation stage of a relationship or after it, actually, when we can grieve the loss of who we wanted them to be and truly grieve it, because if we don't do that, we'll stay attached to them and we'll punish them for it, and we'll punish ourselves for not being enough to make this person into who we want them to be. But if we can grieve the loss of it, then we can actually, in my opinion, become more connected to who they are and not stay conflicted because we're still angry or afraid or ashamed at them not being who we thought they were and who we want them to be, and sometimes who we need them to be. So there's a lot about that I still need to learn in my relationships.
Yeah, and I feel that we do that with other areas in our life as well. You know, I've seen people, I've seen myself in the past and others who say they want spiritual awakening, don't really know what that is, and yet they do everything that they can to stay addicted to a search, which keeps them from finding it.
Isn't that funny? Absolutely. Yeah, I always want to be searching rather than finding.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, you know, when I consider, what might that be about? Sometimes I think and I've definitely had these times where I feel so purposeless in life. And I mean, I don't know if there's a emptier feeling than just feeling purposeless. You know, at least one of my initial steps of actually connecting to a sense of purpose is the search for, you know, the spiritual awakening, you know. So my purpose became the search. And boy, that purpose felt good because I used to have zero purpose in my life. So it's kind of like, okay, finding would mean I lose the purpose that I associate with the search. You know, so I think it kind of calls us, if any of this is true for anybody, then it calls us, we have to upgrade or evolve how we get a sense of purpose. Otherwise, we stay attached to that which we associate our purpose to. And I think we all know people in our lives, some of those people are ourselves, who are very rooted in a victim mentality, we always have problems, health problems. This is always going wrong. My bad back, and now my bad knee, and then this happened, and then this happened, and doctor this, doctor that, poor me. It's kind of like, okay, maybe the real addiction here is to the sense of purpose this person gets through their suffering. One of the reasons why they won't let go of their suffering is because they associate the sense of purpose to it. But if they allowed, easier said than done, but if they allowed their sense of purpose to evolve, then they wouldn't have to stay rooted to their literal experience that they project their sense of purpose onto. So it's kind of like if we could allow our sense of purpose to then evolve into good health and building health, and associate purpose to that, then it's like, okay, I don't have to be a victim anymore. And then eventually, okay, got to evolve my sense of purpose beyond the self-centric, build good health for me and let it keep evolving. So yeah, nonetheless, I appreciate what you put forward about kind of the addiction to always searching and maybe never finding.
Yeah. Thank you. So I understand that on the 19th, you're going to be speaking at SAND, the Science and Non-duality.
That would be true. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm looking
Okay.
forward to that and very honored to be a part of the conference.
Okay. So I thought maybe we can get you prepared in a funny way with some humor. And I have here the Non-duality Teacher's Starter Kit.
Let's hear it. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. So, and I would like you to contribute some ideas too. These are just some of the things that came up to me, and I know that you're a lot funnier than I am. That's for sure. So, first of all, you want to make sure that you use words like healing, the now, oneness, and every now and then throw some Indian words like Kundalini, chakras, Advaita Vedanta. Anything else that you could think of?
Oh, I think that is absolutely wonderful starter kit. And I would say that the now, I think there's a more progressive thing for non-dual teachers to connect with, and that would be not the now, but the soon. If we can realize that the now and the past, that's just duality. I mean, there are two things right there, but the soon, that's where all of our hopes and dreams lie. I think all suffering that we experience now is in the now. So if we can leave the gravity of the now and invest in being present in the soon, I think it takes non-duality to the next level. And I think even the word non-duality, that's too dualistic.
Yeah.
So I think the power of the soon is working towards not non-duality, but just non. So I would recommend all non-duality teachers consider that.
Very good. Yeah. I know there was, my husband lectures too, and he teaches and he deals with spiritual awakening, and he did a video recently, and the video was called something like the mind, is it a liberator or a saboteur, something like that. Yeah. I don't remember the exact word. And we got a comment from someone who didn't like the title because it was too dualistic. It's this or that.
Yeah. Shame on you for experiencing duality. I like that. Exactly. And I think, non-duality itself, it's all paradoxical at the end of the day, and it's good for a laugh. Non-duality, we experience the consciousness of oneness, which of course is separate from the consciousness of duality. So I think non-duality itself depends on duality, or else there is no non-duality.
Exactly. We live in this dimension.
And if we didn't know any better, we might think there's purpose to us living in this dimension. Yeah. We got to be careful with that.
Yeah, exactly. So another piece of advice, use scientific explanations.
I like that, especially to explain that which is not scientific.
Yeah, use words like fractals,
Mm.
Schrodinger, I can't even say it, quantum physics. Make sure you quote Einstein, Stephen Hawking, David Bohm. Okay, it's part of your toolkit. Sound like you're a descendant of Ramana Maharshi, or maybe you've been a disciple of Osho.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that.
Anything else?
Oh no, that is a beautiful list right there.
Okay.
And I think, yeah, the word quantum, we need to invent new ways to, new terms just to have an excuse to use that term more, because I mean, how intelligent do we sound when we can say quantum?
Yeah.
Quantum physics, quantum reality, quantum consciousness, quantumness. Man, life is good.
Yeah. Yeah. What else? Oh, and make sure you confuse people. You know, say important things, and I'll add at the end, but nobody understands this.
Here's the complete understanding of it. And yeah, at the end, nobody understands this.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. And if people use the word empty, just say emptiness is always full.
that's a great catalyst to confusion.
Yeah. And don't forget to mention now and then that you don't exist and that you don't teach anything.
Oh, I love those. Are golden. I like those. Those are creating a lot of ideas in me.
Yeah, I just thought you should have.
We definitely don't exist.
Yeah, and be careful of the pairs of opposites and anything that has the word two in it, or or this and that, or this or that.
Absolutely. Trinities are okay because it's oneness is in the space in between, but yeah, just pairs.
Yeah, pairs. Watch out for pairs. Somebody will get you on that every time. Oh. Anyhow,
Thank you for that. And if there's more, I'd love to hear it, but I love your creativity with the guide for teachers of non-duality.
just a few things.
That is wonderful.
So, how are you doing for time?
Good. In actually about 2 minutes, I will need to jump off for my next appointment, so I can pretend like I'm staying on schedule today.
Okay. All right. So I will be posting your information at the credits. People will be able to see it and find your website and your YouTube with all your, and I highly encourage everyone just to watch the YouTubes if you haven't yet. So many people have already seen them and love them. It's really wonderful. And you do a lot of private sessions as well, I understand?
Yeah, a lot of private sessions, and I'm very blessed to say my practice is fully booked. I'm going to have to make that change to my website, as right now there's not capacity for new clients. But yeah, YouTube and Facebook videos, those are a great way to connect in with me.
Wonderful. And you do retreats as well?
Yeah, right now it's actually been a little while since I've held a retreat of my own, simply because I've had so many new opportunities, purposeful ones, come onto my plate that I've needed to kind of tend to in the garden with various projects. So right now I'm doing guest appearances at retreats and conferences, speaking, and having a blast with it. But the time to kind of organize my own stuff doesn't exist right now.
Yeah.
Right there, the non-dual teachers, the time doesn't exist. And I have nothing to teach you, even if you did come on a retreat of mine.
Yeah, good. So we'll put that in the toolkit, in the starter kit. Time doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Don't forget to say you were never born.
Absolutely. I'm having a beautiful experience resting in this unborn realm.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, JP, this has been so wonderful talking with you. and getting to hear about some of your experiences and what motivates you and some of your ideas. It's really wonderful. And,
yeah, well, I really appreciate you, Nurit, for inviting me into this beautiful venue and offering of yours. And yeah, I really appreciate you valuing and watching my videos. I mean, that just means a lot to me. And I agree, this conversation I've loved. To me, you are an absolute delight.
oh, thank you. Thank you. We both, my husband and I, watch your videos a lot, and we have a great laugh. We love them. Yeah.
Oh, well, I
Very
appreciate you guys
inspiring. Very, very inspiring. So thank you so much, and keep making more of those.
Well, I'm on it, sister, and you keep being you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Nurit.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. And all the information that you need to watch the videos will be on the credits. Thank you, and God bless.
Lehet az a krémes, mit a lányok esznek, de nekem nem vesznek. Ezért, hogyha álmodik a babszika, egy színarany taxiba beleül is a mennyekbe száll. Ottan mennyországi boltba van sok ezer torta, és nem kell állni sorba. Sütemény csak annak szabad ennie, akinek nincs senkie, aki járva is egy